Hey, well, welcome back to Stories of Dave. It's another intermission time. Um, I don't know. I thought today we'd make Naan, make a little Naan. I like the traditional ugly American pronunciation of stuff. You know, so yeah, it's Naan, of course, but for our intents and purposes, we're gonna call it Nan because it's Nan. I hope you're doing okay. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for your continued support of my reading of Hokey Pokey. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I'm still, you know, trying to master the art of doing these readings. There's a lot more to it than I thought. I'm not trying to make excuses for myself, but wow, it's I've got a lot more respect than I may be used to have had for people who do that for a living. Read books on tape, you know, maintain the same volume, um, pronounce words correctly, get the right accent on the right character, cough up a dab. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. I had a good, safe Memorial Day. All five or six of you who tune into this. Little value added today. We're going to make some Naan. And, you know, I get these ideas for these crazy little editorials and stuff. It's just like you throw away funny ideas that are really dark. And I know I'm never going to write them because they're dark and we live in a world where no one has really a sense of humor anymore. You know, you can't. Um, I thought it would be really funny to just start rolling cameras and say, hey, good morning. Today we're going to make some Naan. And I'm going to tell you about when I got aped as a kid. And, you know, and go into some humor about that and talk about basically link it to flatbread and experiences in Israel, and then dovetail that into a simple solution for how to save Great Britain, or at the very least, how perhaps to prevent some future countries in Europe, maybe some of the holdouts like Hungary, from becoming conquered similarly through cuisine, or more precisely, you know, not cooking expertise, but just some cooking know-how. I watched that whole thing happen over there in the UK. From where I sat, it was all leveraged on the idea of food. You know, we need to keep bringing in some migrants because we don't have enough curry. Was the essential man, um, and I kept thinking, folks, curry isn't all that difficult. You can grow your own, you know, turmeric, um, and garlic, and shoot almost everything else you need to make it yourself. If not, you can find the ingredients, right? Um, anyway, I thought that would be really funny, but maybe not. But now your interest is probably piqued about the other story. um, and I didn't really get aped, Ray. But the guy made a pretty good attempt. I was 9 years old, and I was living in Israel at the time with my mom and dad. And we lived in the old ruins of an old hilltop fort that was built by the Knights of Malta on a hilltop over Bethlehem, opposite on the opposite side of a valley from I think it was Bethel is the name of the town. I'm sure it all looks, you know, incredibly different now. I've seen some photos, but none that really, I think, I don't know, give me a really true sense of how much I'd have to go there. But at any rate, when I was a kid, it was mostly wilderness out there in Judea, and near where I lived, which is a place called Tantua. And so we had free reign of the grounds at Tantua. Like I said, it was a hilltop. It was terraced, like olive farms, you know, with ruins at the top and gardens and a Franciscan monastery. And then there were some apartments for visiting scholars, which is where we lived. But below our little apartments, across from the road from the garden, there was a stone wall that, circled the entire property. But on the other side of that road, interestingly enough, was the old Roman road that I imagine Joseph and Mary would have traveled to get down to Bethlehem um, for the census, if historical accounts are accurate. But at any rate, um, I'll never forget it because there was a little stone hut across the way where there lived a woman with, I think it was 12 or 14 kids, some incredible number of kids. And she raised them there alone in this stone building, with nothing. They were shepherds, and their father had stepped a couple of years previous had stepped on a mine left over from one of the wars, from '67 or before. God only knows. At any rate, we were out playing one day out by that wall. This guy, he wasn't necessarily weird. Of course, he's weird in my memory now, but this Palestinian guy came up. He was probably thinking back on it, trying to zero in on memory. He was probably a teenager, probably like a senior in high school or young college age, maybe. But he was fascinated by something over the wall that we just had to see. We had to come see it, had to see it. And so we had both jumped up. We could climb the wall, but with, a good deal of effort. We were 10 years old, but we could either help each other, boost each other up, which in this case we had done. I had boosted my friend Paul up, and I was trying to jump up. And I could do it, but I needed a few tries. But this guy just stepped in, of course, and said, "Here, I'll help you." And instead of lifting me straight up to lift me up so I could see over the wall, essentially lifted me against the wall and started grinding me from behind. At which point, of course, I just flipped out and just Tasmanian devil and broke out of there. With kids, I think the panic is contagious, and I didn't even have to say anything to Paul. He was gone with me. We went back to my apartment where I knew my dad had. He bought all this camping equipment to take with us because we were going to go on this trip into the Sinai. And it's really weird because I thought back on it and thought, why did Dad have a wrist rocket? And how did we get it through security in Athens? Because we came through on our way to do this sabbatical year in Israel. We flew through the airport in Athens, just I think a couple of weeks after the whole Entebbe ordeal was figured out. If that word doesn't ring a bell, then you'll probably also be too young to get the reference of Charles Bronson. But there's a good Charles Bronson movie. I think it's the Bronson one called 90 Minutes Over Entebbe that has to do with that raid. It was a crazy hijacking job that, long story short, wound up with a bunch of hostages in an airport in Uganda when Idi Amin was the president. And the Israelis pulled off a really daring raid in which they landed C-130s in the dead of night under light security, and they had Idi Amin's entourage copied down to the flags, on the front, and drove up to the airport as if they were Idi Amin, and all the terrorists just kind of toasted or saluted or did whatever, and these guys popped out of the windows. And there was only one casualty, I think, and it was the big brother of none other than Bibi Netanyahu, interestingly. But I wondered how my old man had a wrist rocket. Stuff was looser back then, for sure. I remember on our way back from that year in Copenhagen, there was a guy getting on the plane who had a spear gun, and he had it wrapped up so that it looked like a driver, like a big, like a big Bertha driver. I don't think that those existed back then, but that's what it looked like. And he got through. Anyway, so we're gonna make some naan today. I do this in like, I make these pellets. Naan's really easy, you guys. It's basically dough and yogurt, with a little yeast and sugar. Let it rise a little bit, and then I break it into these pellets, so they're ready to go. You'd like a relatively clean cookie surface, or rolling surface, of course. I've got mats and stuff, but I don't know. I want to show you how to do this in a cramped space. Probably more value than that. But you make these and they keep in the fridge all week. If you got like 8 of these or something. So you just make them on command. I want one sometimes. Sometimes the missus wants one, or we both want one, or we'll split one. But the point here is that I learned a long time ago that one of the ways to start beating the high cost of living was to eat out less. And I knew that one of the reasons I ate out was to eat special foods that I didn't feel like I knew how to make well at home. And truth is, there are a lot of those that are tough. I remember trying to, my first foray into that was trying to learn how to make fried rice at home. It tasted like fried rice in the restaurant. And that was, that was years. So you got to remember, this is before the internet. You couldn't just, look stuff up. You had to learn from people and ask questions and be really curious. And you had to fail a lot. Gosh, that one took a long time. But the idea is, all of us generally, we don't go out to eat for the atmosphere. Usually, I can remember very few restaurants. I could count them probably on one hand that have an atmosphere that's really just knockout, and you just want to be there and hang out, order more drinks just to sit in that atmosphere. It's BS. You don't really want to be there. You're there because they have fried rice you really like, or in my case with Indian restaurants, I'm a sucker for, or was a sucker for Indian restaurants because I love naan. And curry's not that hard to make. It really isn't. And there's really a broad range of what could be considered curry too. So, you could play and shoot from the hip and dial in what it is you like the best, and be eating very well for really not that much money. But you just take your disc and, you get it. I keep a little Tupperware flour handy over here constantly. And this is a little mini rolling pin that you can get at any, Asian food store. Here where I live, we have a store called Tane that I love. The people there are very, very cool and helpful. And they've got literally everything there. If it's Asian, Chinese, Filipino, name it. They've got. Anyway, that's where I got this, and this will be your friend. I like this just for general use too. As you can see, I'm working in kind of a cramped space, but all good. And so then the idea is you just flatten this out, and you're gonna need a skillet for this. Regular pan really won't work because you can't get it hot enough. And you can't really, it's tough to do it dry. I like to dry heat these over a super hot skillet. See, this is how I keep my culture from being subverted completely. And I'm having my pubs destroyed and being told that I no longer matter in my own home, because I learned to cook the food my damn self. It's like magic. So once we can cook the naan and we can cook the curry, we're all set. Then we can have a visa system that makes sense. See, and we don't. We no longer have that constant need for a retail market in sauce. We could save Europe. We could save the world. So let's see what else. Geez, I thought I had more stories in me than that about that. Particularly about that Israel thing. I don't know. I keep coming. My head keeps coming back to that wrist rocket. It was really bizarre. We had that thing for years too. After that, it was if memory serves, it was the one we had was a Coleman product, and we got it with a bunch of other of that camping equipment we used on that trip in the Sinai. Oh yeah, that was the first time I ever tasted flatbread. I want to tell that story too. That was the other connector, and I've never had flatbread like it, of course, since then. When we did this trip into the Sinai Desert, it was a 7 or 10 day trip that essentially went down, one coast and across the middle to Mount Sinai, and then up the other coast and back. And it was with a company called Seymour Sinai. A woman named Ora Lipschitz ran it, and you do the whole thing in this open troop carrier, and it's got she's got all these open bins and nets full of boxes of candy, not candy, but cookies and crackers and stuff to keep you salty so that you stay hydrated. Because you're outside the whole time. I mean, we slept in open wadis, open dry river beds at night and stuff. But it was pre-reversion, so it was still Sinai was still really wild back then, which is very cool. A lot of the human, we didn't see much human life deep in the desert. There were military checkpoints, and we ran into Bedouin, for real Bedouin that were on the move and that were staying in traditional Bedouin tents and had us in for tea and stuff. I've heard about the situation today, which is much like with the Bushmen and the Kalahari and indigenous people in a lot of corners of the earth that have kind of gravitated toward bus stops, sadly. Where the baubles are and the shiny things, etc. But oh yeah. So at one point, I can't remember exactly which. Yeah, surprisingly, I can remember some of the names of the different wadis we were in, but I don't remember this one. But we joined for dinner. A small clan of Bedouin who were cooking flatbread over an open fire, and they had this. It looked like a wok essentially. They just upturned over the coals, which were camel dung, which blew my 10-year-old mind apart. It was all perfectly spherical. These little like clusters of grape shot is what it looked like, the old Civil War grape shot, but totally desiccated and now smoldering, completely odorless. Beautiful fuel. And they would put the dough right on top of that concave wok thing and cook it that way, and it was phenomenal. And I'll never have flatbread like that ever again, I'm sure. But I try. I don't know why this thing isn't. Yeah, here we go. Voila. Now this is more. Now this here is more round bread than it is flatbread. Now we call it flatbread for a reason, but if you look at it real close now, it looks round like it's a pillow. And it'll get like that. It's like that pita bread. Now, for that reason, I think technically this isn't naan. This here ain't naan. It ain't real naan because it ain't doughy in the middle. It's airy. It's got air in it. So it's more like pita. What do you want? It's flatbread. It's in the kitchen. It's right now. And just putting some scorch on it, right? Oh. Make it look all restaurant fresh and delicious. That, of course, tastes restaurant. But you're not going to be able to taste it. Yeah. And that's how we do. Anyway, thanks for joining me today for a really bizarre intermission with Naan. You never get enough Naan. And remember to make some hummus to go with your Naan, too. It's good for you, boys and girls. Check in soon. We're going to have, not soon, I don't know, the next couple of days. We'll have some more installments of Hokey Pokey. This next part kind of starts out slow and then fizzles out altogether, to quote Neil Young. But I've got another piece up too called Smug that you should really take a look at if, especially if you have a particularly dark sense of humor. It's my love letter back to Hollywood about this whole. I don't know if you've been sensing this or not. This kind of the gentle pressure of the million media fingertips, urging you to consider how good life could be if you enjoyed human flesh now and then as part of your diet. Same way they ran the Bugs routine and the, fake meat and all that stuff. You're getting it from a gazillion well-funded directions at the same time. So, at any rate, I'll leave you on that note. Enjoy Smug and tune in soon for some more Hokey Pokey. And hopefully I'll get another weird intermission up again soon, too. I get views on them or whatever. Or even if I don't, who cares? They're fun. See ya.